Okay, I'm getting an MRI, right? What if it's gotten bigger, right? I'm going to have surgery immediately. What am I going to do for work? I'm going to have to be out for 6 weeks. What are my bosses going to do? And I'm going down this rabbit hole of all the what ifs. And my therapist will be like, well, what if it hasn't grown? Right? Like, what if you don't have to have surgery? Basically teaching me to like reframe my mindset and to live in the present and deal with things as they come, which when I first met with her, I was like, this is bullshit. I'm not ever going to use this. And I now use it all the time. It's been like such a great approach to like handling now doctor's appointments, future scans. I wanted to like share that like kind of tip with everyone because it has been like life-changing tip because I do feel like it can help somebody else. Hey everyone, welcome to season 3. This is Shauna.
And this is Rosalina, and we're your hosts for Too Young for This Shit podcast. This podcast is not just about boobs, but our journey with cancer. We are young millennials, open about giving you a raw and unfiltered look into our lives. We are in no way medical professionals, nor are we offering medical advice. Any medical references are cited directly from public websites or from our personal diagnosis. Some topics and stories may be triggering to those who are fighting, have fought, or have loved someone with cancer. Hey everyone, this is Rosalina.
And this is Shauna. Welcome to season 3 of the Too Young for This Shit podcast.
We are so excited for this first episode of season 3, but before we dive in, we have some housekeeping items and some updates to share with you all. We'll also have chapters in our show notes, so if you just want to skip this section, we'll just have chapter markers where you could just jump to the actual episode. So our first initiative we want to introduce to our listeners is our latest project on our Instagram account, where we invite our community to share their own quotes. We want our Instagram account to serve as just a platform where the community has a space to express themselves and just let others know that they are not alone in their personal journeys. To submit a quote, you just simply access the Google form, which will link it in our show notes. And by participating, you'll have the opportunity to connect with others. We want you to express how you're feeling, whether it's positive or negative. We would accept anything and everything. We are excited to receive your submissions and cannot wait to share your quote with our community.
Another new way you can share your stories this season is through voice memos. For the next 5 episodes, we'll be asking a new question each week for you, the listeners, to call in and share your stories. Your story submissions might be featured on a special episode of the podcast that'll air during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. This is the perfect opportunity for anyone who's been hesitant to apply to be a guest speaker on the podcast, but still wants to share their experiences with the community. For the very first special episode, we want to know, what does it mean to you to be an advocate? To leave us a message with your thoughts, you can follow the link in our show notes. It will take you to a page where you'll see the prompt, leave a message for Rosalina and Shauna, and a button that says start recording, which you can click to share your answer. We'll be sharing these answers on air in just 3 weeks, so be sure to leave us a message soon.
A new thing that we're doing for season 3 is we'll have mini episodes, and we are calling them Tit Talks. This is where we talk about the latest news in the breast cancer space. So these episodes serve as a valuable resource to stay updated and informed about the ongoing advancements. We encourage you to utilize this to ask any relevant questions to your doctor and ensuring that you are receiving personalized insights and guidance based on your health. So exciting news, we've set up a Buy Me Coffee page for our podcast. If you're in a position to do so, you have the opportunity to support us by making a $5 contribution or opting to a monthly membership of just $5. Your generous support will greatly assist us in continuing to produce quality content for our listeners. And your donations will help with the costs associated with running a podcast. So that includes just alleviating monthly costs for websites / podcasting hosts, like bandwidth fees, marketing, etc. So every donation will receive a shout out on our podcast. Thank you for just even considering donating to our Buy Me Coffee page.
For those who cannot financially support us, a free thing you can do is to leave us a review. Here's one from Tits Deep for breast cancer. Worth a listen. Rosalina and Shauna keep it real and to the point. Everything they have to say is either really helpful, relatable, or super insightful. Thanks for being so inclusive of young women. These reviews greatly help our podcast and help us reach other listeners, so please keep them coming. 2023 has been the year of panels for both Rosalina and myself. We were asked to be on the Brem Foundation's 2023 Check Out My Rack web event, where we spoke about the importance of breast health and self-advocacy. If you want, you can check out the recording of our panel on our link tree, which we will link in the show notes. Another thing we were also so excited about is we were asked to be a panelist at the Breasties Camp Breastie event, which is an event that is camping for a weekend for breast cancer survivors, thrivers, caregivers, anybody in the breast cancer community or gynecological cancer community. We are recording this episode in May 2023. The Camp Breastie event is next month. I will be talking about social media, and Rosalina will be speaking on the career panel, and we're just really excited to be a part of this event. So now that we're finished with our housekeeping for season 3, Rosalina, how are you doing?
You know, I'm doing better than the first half of 2023. So I would say if you asked me in February or March, I probably would tell you something different, but I think I'm in a good place right now. How about you, Shauna?
I am definitely in a way better place than I was in season 2. I'll definitely say that. I went back and listened to last season and just really kind of hit me how hard of a time I had, my first year in survivorship. And I'm definitely in a way better place, like emotionally, physically, than I was last year. So I'll jump into my health updates because there's quite a bit since I left you all in season 2. I had mentioned that I was seeing a gastro doctor for my upset gut from chemo, which followed me for months after treatment was over. The gastro doctor that I was seeing at NYU had sent me for like a bunch of tests. So I started with a CT scan of my abdomen because that was the first kind of step to see if there was like anything like visibly in my abdomen that was causing the bloating I was feeling after treatment. So I got a CAT scan first. I went in and I was kind of like, great, like another test that I have to do, another scan that I have to have. And I feel like at that point I was kind of like, all right, like let's go. Let's just continue this, because in survivorship, I thought it would have kind of calmed down a little bit, and it definitely did not. So I went in like almost kind of like, all right, let's just get this over with. More annoyed, I think, than anything to be having yet another scan. But after that scan, I had the results back, and there was a finding of a liver mass. And at that point, I got like very upset. Like, what does this mean? Is this cancerous? Now what? Like, do I have to get this removed? Who do I see? So my gastro doctor had sent me to a hepatologist who I met with, and she reviewed my CAT scan and had said that it was a benign liver mass that was most likely caused by long-term birth control use. And they are benign, but because of where it was located on my liver, she wanted me to see a surgeon to see if I would need to get it removed and if it was going to cause me like complications down the line.
Yeah, I remember when you texted me that you had a liver mass, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is the last thing that you need. Like, it's just like one thing after the other after the other. Like, you can't just catch a break.
Yeah, I think I had actually texted you a picture of the CAT scan and like circled the mass, and
Yes,
it was, I
you
mean,
did.
it was big, right? Like,
Yes, it was.
I'll post a picture of it on Instagram for anyone who's like curious. I mean, it's like on the tip of my liver. I was feeling like major like bloating. I had like a little bit of like a pooch that I never had, but I wasn't in like any type of physical like pain. So they didn't think that the bloating was from the liver mass. It was still a major blow, and obviously, again, more specialists to go see and more scans to have. So I ended up seeing a surgeon, and he looked at it and said, just based on where it is located in my liver, it's on the tip of my liver, that if the mass was to get bigger, that it could like rupture essentially my liver and I could have internal bleeding. And he really like highly suggested getting it removed. And that was upsetting because it was like a very, very like invasive like surgery. I could possibly have a drain hanging out of my stomach for a day or two after surgery. I had just had my breast reconstruction surgery done. And I was just like another something that like another recovery, right? Like just something that I was just not ready to hear. I was ready to like kind of move forward with my life and just be done with this. And like to hear that I had to have another surgery that was no lifting for 6 weeks. It was just not something I wanted to hear, not something I was ready to hear. And he wanted to do it like right away. And I was like, can I please do this like in maybe the winter time when I have time off from work so that I can plan accordingly, not to be like lifting children? Because again, I'm a nanny in New York City and I watch 3 kids now, not 2, and I have to lift. And he was like, "Yeah, we could do it in the winter. It doesn't need to be done right away, but this is definitely something you want to do." So I had a CAT scan in June of 2022, and I had an MRI of the abdomen in October 2022. And actually, this is like really, really exciting news for me, is that my mass actually shrunk quite a
Very
bit,
exciting.
actually. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't even know that this could happen. And they said, because I'm off birth control, like it can start to shrink, which was like, it was just like the news I needed to hear.
I
Like
mean,
it
like
was like,
internally, yeah, you're like, yes,
yes,
this
I
is
was like, thank
great.
God.
Yeah.
So I still like was not ready for another like major surgery. So I had asked, like, since it's shrinking and obviously it's not getting bigger, can I do this another time? Can I just monitor this? And like, if I don't have to get it removed and it just keeps shrinking and it's not bothering me and it's 100% benign, I can live with something like this. Can we just monitor it for the time being? So I go again October of this year to get basically like a yearly MRI to check it. And as long as it's not getting bigger, I can just continue to monitor it. I'm going to consider that a win, and we're taking it, because not having like another major surgery after, the last couple of years is good to hear.
That is absolutely a win for sure. Because I mean, like you just mentioned, the doctor wanted you to be in surgery like right away. And I mean, I think it was good. I mean, not think. It was good that you waited kind of to see what would happen. And it's actually interesting. Like he or she didn't mention there was a possibility that the benign could also shrink.
I think they were just as surprised as I was to hear that it was shrinking. They said it could. I guess it's not like it didn't seem like so likely that it was going to. So maybe that's why they didn't tell me that it was a
Yeah.
possibility. But when I talked to the hepatologist and I talked to the surgeon, they were both like, I mean, if as long as it's shrinking, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's not something that is like super common, but it happens to women basically who have been on long-term birth control. So since I have not been on my birth control since 2021, after I was diagnosed with hormone positive breast cancer,
Mhm.
now it's been 2.5 years of being off it. So I'm hoping it just continues to shrink. Another thing I did, which I'm actually really, really proud of myself for doing, was I finally switched oncologists. I felt throughout survivorship, my oncologist just was no longer doing it for me. She's great. I loved her. She was like perfect for me through treatment. I think that she was the doctor I needed to have to hold my hand through treatment and to do all that. But she is, I think, probably 6 or 7 months after finishing treatment, I was really starting to be like really unhappy with my care. I just felt like I needed more, and she was just way, way too conservative for me. I kept going into appointments and being like, I want to know about like the Zometa infusions. I want to learn about like the Signatera test, and if I qualify for that test. That's a blood test that detects cancer in your blood.
Yeah, it detects your like biopsy from your tumor to see if that same tumor is in your blood.
Exactly. And I kept going to my oncologist with all of these things that Rosalina was doing, or like other breast cancer survivors in the support groups were doing. And I just kept getting dismissed. Everything I brought to her attention was either there's not enough data, it's not proven that this actually works. And I just felt like everything I was coming at her with was just, she wasn't even showing me any type of even the data there was. She wasn't even open to having me try anything. I felt like that was like a red flag to me. And especially at the time, too, I had made the decision to stop the Lupron shots. And because I stopped the Lupron shots, I was terrified to go onto any other hormone therapy. I was just like, I don't know if you remember from season 2, I really, really struggled with hormone therapy to the point where I like couldn't walk. I was having like major depression. My body was a total mess on the hormone therapy. And because I decided to stop, my oncologist kept pushing me to start tamoxifen, and I just honestly was not ready. I just wanted to get all the hormone blockers out of my body. I wanted to regulate my period. I just was so traumatized from my time on hormone therapy that I was just absolutely not at all ready to start. What else can I do? How do I regulate my hormones? If I choose not to be on hormone therapy, how else can I get some sort of like, I don't know if it was like detection or anything other than hormone therapy. Like, what else can I be doing? I kept going into the office and I kept getting just like a regular blood test. And it was nothing that, it wasn't even testing tumor markers. It was just a legit like blood panel test that I could have gotten at my general practitioner's office once a month rather than going into the cancer center. So I kept going in. I'm like, I don't even know why I'm still coming here right now. I just felt really dismissed. I felt like, and I kept coming basically saying like, I'll be the data. I want to be the data. I'll be the guinea pig to try this on. I was in 3 clinical trials. I am that person that is obviously willing to try everything. And I hit a point where it was my last appointment with her, and she kind of blew in and blew out. And I felt like a lost cause because I wasn't doing what she wanted me to do. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready to switch. My oncologist at NYU was the head of oncology. And I felt like if she wasn't going to, I don't know, be what I needed, that I probably wasn't going to get it from any other oncologist at NYU if she was the head.
You're not wrong about that. Yeah,
Right.
totally. I would have thought the same thing.
Right. So I had a conversation with Matt, and originally I wanted to go to Sloan when I got first diagnosed, but my health insurance at the time wasn't accepted at Sloan Kettering. Matt had started a new job in October 2021, and his company would allow me to be on his health insurance if we had a domestic partnership. So Matt and I got a domestic partnership, and now I'm able to be on his health insurance, which is a lot better than mine. So I was able to actually make an appointment with an oncologist at Sloan Kettering, which I found through a New York City breast cancer support group. She came really highly recommended by like multiple people. So I went into it being like, I'm probably not going to get an appointment right away. And I actually was able to be seen in like 3 weeks. And so I saw my new oncologist in December of 2022. And I went in, and she's like this little woman. She has to be maybe in like her late 60s. And I don't know, like her vibe was, I think, what I needed. I walked in and we went through everything. We went through like my entire pathology. We went through the treatment I had. Again, it was kind of very much like NYU. Like she was well versed in like all of the treatment I had. She had read through all of my reports, read through everything. So when I came, like when she walked in that room, she knew almost everything about me, which was like incredible. There was very few things that I had to like go in and tell her about because she just knew it. And she asked me why I was switching from NYU. And I told her everything that I had basically just said. I just felt like my oncologist was too conservative for me. I am that person that wants to try everything. I am that person that wants to know everything. I want to know it before it happens. I want to be able to prepare myself. And she looks at me, and I'm telling her, I'm like, I asked about the Signatera test, and my oncologist said there's just like not enough data on it. I asked about Zometa, there's not enough data on it. And she looks at me and she goes, what do you mean? That's all she said to you? And I said, yeah, that's what she said. There's no data. She goes, did she provide you any data? I said, no, she didn't. She just dismissed me. And my oncologist goes, well, if there's not enough data, like be the fucking data. That's what she said to me. She cursed my appointment, used the F word. And at that point I was like, I'm in the right spot.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
my type
yeah.
of lady. I think I had texted you basically. I texted Rosalina saying this appointment was such a breath of fresh air. It really was. And I think
Yeah.
I texted Rosalina, I was like, I feel so much better. I was like, I wish I would have like known her in the 70s. Like I wish like she just has like this really cool vibe about her. I just really,
Yes.
really like her.
Yeah.
But I went in and she wanted me to start all these different things. I was able to get a Prolia shot, which is essentially a Zometa infusion without the infusion part. So that's an every 6-month shot.
Yeah, you have to see if your insurance covers it because my insurance didn't.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I mean, that's a preferred way. So, like, you don't have to sit in the chemo chair getting the infusion. But yeah, you can also get just the shot if your insurance covers
Yeah.
it.
We talked about hormone therapy, which we'll get into in our hormone therapy update episode. But I walked out of there just feeling like so heard, so understood. She heard all my fears. She heard all of my concerns. I left feeling like finally, like she said, you know, she'll get me the Signatera test, which has been a little difficult because we like have to get my tumor from NYU in order to perform the Signatera test. It's been about 5 months since I've been seeing her. We're trying to get my tumor and get it covered by insurance and all of that. But we're in the process of it, which is making me feel so much better. And I'm not just going to Sloan and getting like a blood test every couple of
Yeah.
months. Like I feel like I'm getting like, I don't want to say better care because the care I got at NYU was incredible, but I think it's just different for me in survivorship. You know, I've talked about NYU multiple times. It was the best place for me. I love it. I love everything about that facility. I like it better than going to Sloan, to be completely honest with you. I have such like a sense of loyalty to NYU that it felt like I was almost like cheating on it by going to Sloan in a
Right.
weird way.
Yeah. Was that one of the reasons why you kind of hesitated at first because you had such an amazing care at NYU that you just didn't want to break up, like basically with
Yes.
your
I
oncologist
I
and your
think
team?
it was that. It was definitely breaking up with my oncologist. I didn't know if I was going to have to switch my entire team to Sloan, which I didn't want to because I loved my breast surgeon. I like
Yeah.
love my radiology oncologist. I love the facility. Like I didn't want to just wipe my hands of NYU. I love like my plastic surgeon is through NYU. I didn't want to have to do all of that. And I haven't had to, luckily. Like I'm able to keep my full team. I mean, it's a little bit more annoying because it's obviously two separate hospital systems.
Yes.
So it is
Yes.
a little bit trickier getting my record every time I see my oncologist to get my records sent over to my breast surgeon and like my team at NYU. But it's doable. And I feel so much better about it that I'm like, as annoying as this is going to be, I'm willing to do it.
Yeah. I think that's really good for the listeners to hear that perspective that even when you saw your oncologist at NYU, you kept feeding her all these things and she told you no, no, no. But then internally, you're like, okay, I know that I should be doing these things and she's not giving them to me. So I'm going to find someone else. So I thought that's such a great approach.
Right. And I think based on to my first experience with the gynecologist that dismissed my lump in the beginning and not getting that second opinion,
Right.
I think I'm very hard on myself about that, like not immediately going and you know what, let me go get this checked out by somebody different. I think
Absolutely.
now that I know better, I'm doing better. And that to
Yes.
me was just the perfect example of going to get a second opinion, advocating for myself, making sure that I'm being heard in my own medical care because I'm the one that has to take these hormone therapy meds. I am the one that has to live in this body and I want to be heard
Yes.
and I want to I
Do
want to make
what's
sure
right
that I'm
for
not going to
you.
make that same mistake again. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is essentially all the updates I have currently. How about you, Rosalina? What's been going on with you? You've had quite a year.
Yes, I did. Oh man. So basically, I just want to start off with after I was finished with active treatment, essentially what my cancer team and I talked about was having an annual screening and doing a switch off, whether it's a mammogram and an ultrasound, because just as a reminder, I had a single mastectomy. And so the right side would need to be checked. So that's why I do the mammogram slash ultrasound every other year. Then I would do an MRI. That's essentially what we talked about and like the protocol. But I did it more than once this year. And I'm actually going to have at least, I think, 3 different screenings this year. And so I'm not really looking forward to the third one. But my first screening was back in December of 2022, and I got an MRI. I had my breast reconstruction surgery back in June. And so 6 months later, I got an MRI, and that is just my annual screening. And so, I went in and I wasn't really worried. I was just like, this is just for my health. Everything will be fine, right? When I went in and the tech took me back, hooked me up and everything like that. But every time that a tech reads your notes and stuff, obviously they see your age. She knew that I was 29, and basically she was like, "How did you find your lump?" And she was basically saying, "Oh, like you're so young." And before that phrase, "you're so young," used to be triggering for me. But as time has passed, it's not so anymore. And I'm actually just, I don't know, I guess maybe numb to that phrase.
I think also too, because I think now we know we're actually not too young. We're not too young for
Yeah.
this to happen to us.
Yeah. The MRI experience, like I said, was great. But when I got my results, essentially they found on the left breast where I had my single mastectomy and my reconstructive surgery, they found just a non-mass enhancement along the surgical incision. And so the radiologist who reviewed my MRI basically said it could be related to post-surgical changes and fat necrosis. And I was like, what the fuck is fat necrosis? And essentially, and this is just from the breast cancer now.org website, but fat necrosis is a benign condition that most commonly develops after an injury or a trauma to the breast tissue. It could form as like a lump around it, but I personally did not feel a lump or anything along the area that they mentioned, but essentially it's just damage or dead tissue. They required me to do a 6-month follow-up for that area. The right side was clear, so super happy about that. The next annual screening that I did was already scheduled, and that was for my mammogram slash ultrasound in March of 2023. They were checking the right breast, and again, I wasn't really nervous. We went and did the ultrasound first, and I don't know, I just feel like with the ultrasound, it's a little different because I just get flashbacks when the tech is like putting the machine on your breast, looking for the area. They're not talking to you. All you see is like a black screen. You can't really see anything. And then I'm just getting just flashbacks from it. So I think I got like a little nervous when I was on the table. And the thing that really threw me off was when she was checking my right armpit where my lymph nodes are. She asked me to lift my left arm. And I was like, oh, this is new. This is not something that we haven't done before. And she didn't really say anything. Like, I don't know, like, just give me something. Just like say something, right? And then she was just basically like serious. I also need to mention she had another person with her, and I think she was in training. because usually there's only one person doing the exam. But anyways, so she checked the left side, she did it quickly, and then went back to the right side and then started focusing on that area a little longer. And in my head, I was like, what the fuck is going on? So then after the ultrasound, I did the mammogram. And the mammogram was easy, whatever. And actually, like, a lot of people hate doing the mammogram machine, and I actually don't mind it. I know it hurts, and it definitely does in some ways, but it's quick and easy. And I just feel like that part of the exam isn't as bad. I just feel like the ultrasound is what's worse for me. The next day, I received a phone call, and usually when UCLA calls me, I don't get like triggered, but I picked up the phone and basically they were like, we need you to come in and do additional screening for your right breast. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh shit, like this is serious. What the fuck is going on? I'm like on the phone and I basically tell her like, what? You need, like, why? She's like, oh, we found something suspicious, and so we just need you to come back in.
Your right breast was your healthy breast.
Yes.
Okay.
The right side is the healthy one, so that's the one that gets examined. So when I was on the phone with her and she was basically asking me like when I'm available and like the dates that she has, I was basically in tears. And Brian Brian heard me from upstairs, and he literally like ran upstairs and basically was like in the room with me. The tech said, oh, there was like a cancellation on Thursday, and so can you come in for that day? And that was the same day I was going to see my medical oncologist anyways, so it would just be really nice to just have all my appointments all in one day. And so it's okay, yes, like whatever, I just want to get this over with. This was the same time when I was rehearsing for my dance performance. I'm a part of a dance team, and the first time I was dancing for the team was like in Q1 of 2022. And then I didn't dance with them again until this year in January of 2023. And so we were doing like a cabaret show, and I also had a solo. I was representing Selena. If you don't know who she is, she's just like a legendary musician who died young. She is just such a great artist. So I was really excited and so thrilled to just even represent her. So that was just a lot of pressure on myself as well, and something that I was looking forward to. So during that time, and I think the cabaret show was maybe 2 weeks after when I had the mammogram and the ultrasound exam. And so I essentially had so many thoughts in my mind, right? I don't know if I can do the show anymore. I don't, like, basically mentally, I don't know if I can do it. And so I was thinking like I may have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. And that's just so devastating to me that I even had to even go through that route if I needed to do, because obviously I had to take care of something way bigger than
I think giving up something like in your life again because of cancer.
Right, exactly. After I hung up the phone with the tech, I just went like crazy. And I basically was like, okay, I need to call my brother. So I called George, and I was hysterically crying. And he was trying to calm me down and whatever. And if you haven't heard our episode in season 2, basically I brought 2 of my brothers on the podcast, and we talked about their experience with me having cancer. And so George is my oldest brother. He's the one who's just everyone's garden, I should say. And so he's my garden and the person who I look up to when I have any issues or anything like that. So yeah, I called him and basically told him everything. And then after I hung up the phone, I told Brian, I was like, okay, I think I need to call my parents. And then Brian's like, wait, hold up. Let's not do that. We don't know anything yet. And he's absolutely right. We don't really know anything. That's why they're asking for an additional test to confirm. But one of the things, though, that Brian and I did, and it's something that I also did during my diagnosis, like we went out for a walk. And I think that helped a little bit. The test was the next day. So everything happened so fast, so quick. So I couldn't sleep that night. I called off work the next day. I was like, listen, I have all these appointments. I won't be able to be online. And my manager understood. So the next day is my appointment. And it was, I think, 11 a.m. in the morning. Brian was coming with me. And the lady at the office called me that morning. And she was like, oh, do you know where the office is? And I was like, yeah, I totally know where it is. So that was nice because I don't think I've ever actually been to that location yet. And then closer to my appointment, I think maybe I was, 2 minutes, 5 minutes late. And they called me. They're like, oh, you're coming? I'm like, should I be concerned? I felt harassed, essentially. Calm
Meanwhile,
down.
doctors have no problem leaving you in a waiting room for an hour and a
yes,
half.
I'm only fucking 5 minutes. I had to go park. In Los Angeles, it takes time to fucking find a parking spot. So
I think it's worse
leave
than
me
New
alone.
York.
Well, yeah, yes, it is. It really is. So anyways, I went into the location and they called me to go in. And basically, I was on a mission. I wasn't feeling great. I wanted comfort. Brian was my comfort. And when the lady called me, I was like, oh, can I bring Brian with me? And she was like, oh, no, we don't, they can't be in the same room while we're doing the test. And then I lied and I said, oh, but in this other location, they let me. And then she's like, oh, really? They did? I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, but I have to ask the doctor. And she's like, okay, but come back with me and we can ask. And then I was like, no, I'll just stay here. Because last time, and this didn't happen at UCLA, but it happened at the University of Washington, they did the same exact thing where they're like, oh, yeah, we'll ask the doctor, but just come back in the room with me. And they never did because they tricked me. So I was like,
you're like, I'm having nobody do this
game
again.
Hell no, I'm not playing this game with you. So essentially I stayed back and she went to ask the doctor. And basically, I made this whole fit. But then the doctor came and then he basically explains. And then I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Whatever. So I went back in with the tech, laid on that fucking table. And then she had my actual results on the other screen, on my left side while she was working on the right side. And so I kind of saw the areas that she was looking at. So basically she was looking at the area of quote unquote a solid mass that they found in my right breast. And then the large swollen lymph nodes that they found on my right side. And so she was basically just going back through that area. And essentially, once she was done, she was like, okay, I'll bring back Brian, and then the doctor will be in here in the next few minutes. She brought Brian back in the room. And Brian and I was just shaking. I couldn't even wait any longer. And I even actually opened the door to see if the doctor was going to come in. And then they saw that I was opening the door and then oh yeah, he's coming. And I'm like, okay. So the doctor comes in and he had a concerned look on his face. And I was about to fucking black out. I was about to black out in that room. And he was like, the mass that we found actually looks more fluid and looks more like a cyst than how it looked 2 days ago. Because 2 days ago, it looked solid. But now, looking at the results again today with this new test that we did, it looks more fluid. And Brian and I
Were you like not
You're like,
breathing throughout these entire results?
I wasn't. No, I wasn't at all. I
Okay.
wasn't. Like I said, I was about to black out. I like
Because
literally was
I'm
about to
not
black
breathing,
out.
listening to you say the
Yes,
results.
because
So
it was so intense. The room was so intense. And Brian was like, "How did that change? You guys saw it be like a mass 2 days ago, and now it looks more fluid and looks more like a cyst." And so basically, the doctor was mentioning sometimes it could just be the way that the tech is like doing the test. And so I've never heard that before. And now thinking back, I think the person who was doing the exam in the first place was new because she had someone next to her just watching her do the exam. Anyways, we were able to breathe. We were so fucking ecstatic. Brian and I, like, once we left, we like hugged it out. We were so excited. And we are like, since we took the day off today and your appointment is not until like the next 2 or 3 hours, what should we do? And so we went to the Santa Monica Pier. We rode the roller coaster, and it was like such a great moment for us and such a great way to like celebrate. So I met with my breast surgeon because usually when I have a screening done, I meet with her like a few days after. When I met with her, she was like, "Great news. We found that it's a cyst." And I think I even asked her, like, what are ways that the cyst could shrink, I guess. And she didn't really have an answer for me. But basically, she just mentioned that, we need to monitor it. And so you need to have a follow-up 6 months after. My next mammogram and ultrasound is in September of 2023. That's just to see whether the cyst shrank. That was the best method to see that. And I even asked her about the lymph nodes, and basically in the results I read in my chart, they called it borderline prominent axillary lymph nodes. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? I searched it. And some of the things that the internet mentioned was like an infection, or sometimes when you get a vaccine in the arm, it could enlarge your lymph nodes. And the other thing was like cancer, it's like all these things. She didn't really say much about that either. Basically, she just asked me like, "Oh, did you get like a vaccine in that arm?" And I was like, "No." And I was like, just really scared about that because I'm like, well, why are my lymph nodes enlarged? Am I stressing myself out with the whole dance performance show and I'm just putting a lot of pressure on myself? Or am I actually receiving an infection and I just don't know? Because I wasn't sick. I feel like that was the only things that she really had to say was like, it's just a cyst and we'll have to like monitor it in the next 6 months. But she was like, you have an MRI scheduled from the follow-up that I need to do back in December of 2022. So the 6-month mark was in June of 2023. And she's like, you can move that up just for peace of mind if you just wanted to like double check on the right side and make sure that everything is fine. And so I made them move it up to May. And that's when I recently had the MRI done. And this time around, I was nervous. I just felt like with the whole scare that I had with the mammogram and ultrasound exam, I just wanted to make sure that it is a cyst or it went away, or with the lymph nodes, it's not enlarged. The day that I was scheduled to do the MRI, I basically asked Brian if he could take me out to dinner because my MRI was like at night. And so we did. That's just a nice way to just treat yourself and just minimize the anxiety that I had with this exam. But everything went smoothly. And that was on a Thursday. And I had another dance performance that weekend. I was dancing at the LA Fair, and that was really fun. But, I feel like during that process of just like the waiting game, you can't really do much and like worry so much. And so I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to be in the present and just have fun And I know that I'm probably going to receive my results on Monday, which I did. On Monday, I got my chart message. Like one of those,
Classic.
once you get those, I know when you get those messages, you're like, oh, here we go. Here we go.
Yep.
And so I opened it up, and then I saw that the radiologist just said normal results. And that's all I needed to like see. And so what I did was I went to Brian's office, and then I just put my phone in his face. He's like, what? I think I shouldn't have done it in that way because I feel like he got really nervous. But he like read it. He's like, oh my God, thank fucking God.
Like an instant sense of relief, right?
Yes, definitely an instant relief for sure for the both of us, because we both had health issues in the past year or so, and we've been going through this together, and it's either that I have something or he has something, and we just need a break from all this health shit. And it's just really nice to finally be in a space where I'm doing better and then he's also doing better. Even though like Brian wants to be with me and wants to spend his life with me, I just feel bad in the sense that he has to also go through this. And I actually didn't realize this until maybe sometime late last year. He does have some PTSD from my diagnosis. It sucks that like he has that, and
He's carrying
it's
that with him
because
as
of
well.
my diagnosis. Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, for you with Matt, if he also is feeling that same way.
I think everyone's traumatized. It has created like a PTSD. Every time I go to the doctor for anything, I think like everyone takes a breath. When everyone is like kind of waiting. I don't think anybody's waiting for the shoe to drop. I don't believe that that's the case. But I mean, I think I said it on the Kelly Clarkson show. Like every scan, every appointment, like creates like a baseline of anxiety, right? Of just being like anything could happen, right? It could come back. It might never come back, but everybody that I love and that is in my circle has a sense of PTSD from it.
Yeah.
And I think it's not that it's like normal because obviously it's trauma, but I mean, a cancer diagnosis is just traumatic for everyone. I want to ask you this. So now that like the dust has settled, you can like kind of look at how you reacted based on like all of your results, and like, do you feel like you overreacted at all? Do you feel like those emotions were just all over the place and you overreacted?
I did, because at one point, even though I survived breast cancer, at that moment, I just felt that I was closer to death than just the living aspect of life. I really felt like I overreacted because I thought of so many things where it's like, okay, it's definitely cancer, where they just needed to do an additional screening just to make sure that what they saw in the first test, that it confirmed with the second test. You can't automatically assume that it is cancer. The ultrasound machine is so sensitive to everything.
Honestly, I wouldn't even say you overreacted, right? These are the repercussions of everything we've gone through, right? Like
Yeah.
I had a MRI recently, like this past February, and I went into it like with a sense of being numb, but also pissed. Like I was more annoyed because like I had to take my hair extensions out. It was like another scan that I had to go to. Like I was more like annoyed than anything.
Right.
But then when I was going in for that MRI to get my liver checked, I remember like low key freaking out, like being, what if it's gotten worse? I'm gonna have to have surgery like immediately. And just like, just all of those emotions come back, and then like the fear, and then you have to wait for the results. I've also been practicing this with my therapist. My therapist she practices a therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. It's a form of like mindfulness based therapy. So when I will talk to her about like my anxieties, like my fears, and like I find myself kind of like spiraling and going down okay, if this I'll look at that and be like, okay, I'm getting an MRI, right? What if it's gotten bigger, right? I'm going to have to have surgery immediately. What am I going to do for work? Like I'm going to have to be out for 6 weeks. What are my bosses going to do? And I'm going down this rabbit hole of all the what ifs. And my therapist will be like, well, what if it hasn't grown? Right? Like, what if you don't have to have surgery? Like, basically teaching me to like reframe my mindset and to live in the present and like deal with things as they come, which when I first met with her, I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I'm not like ever going to use this. And I now use it all the time. It's been like such a great approach to like handling now doctor's appointments, future scans. I wanted to like share that tip with everyone because it has been like life-changing, and it has kept anxiety at bay for me in my daily life, not just for the big things.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. We talked about this before, and it's something that I love that we both share in terms of like how we cope with our scans. And one of the ways that you and I basically talked about was like praying to our grandmothers. I don't know my grandmother from my mom's side because she died really young, but from my dad's side, like I grew up with her, and she recently passed away in November of 2022. And so I carry her name in my actual name. So her name is Lena. She is a very special person for me, and she's the queen in my family, and everyone loves her. She's adorable, and she just like lights up the room. I knew that by praying to her that I feel like she would be able to hear me and to guide me and all those things. So I feel like that's just one of the ways where I feel like a sense of calmness. And I'm not sure if that's the same way that you feel when you pray to your grandmother.
This is something that I think you and I have like recently bonded over, because I think you and I have separately have had conversations about like religion and not feeling comfortable speaking about our religious things on this podcast. But I thought I was like the only one that I didn't pray to a god. I pray to my grandma. I talk to my grandma. I lived with my grandma. Like, my grandma grew up down the street from me my whole life almost. I lived with her. I took care of her. She was my favorite person. She still to this day nobody holds a candle to her. Like, she's my girl. And it's funny, when I got diagnosed, I would talk to her a lot. I would pray to her. When I came out of surgery, I was like crying for my grandma. I wasn't crying for anyone. I'm getting like emotional talking about this, but my first day of chemo, I wore my grandma's sweatshirt. She has this shirt. It says, "Oh shit" on it. It's like in like a family fate. I have it. It's like my most prized possession. And I wore that like my first day of chemo. And like, just to have like a sense of her with me. I mean, I pray to her like a lot. Like, and it could be anything. I think I had said to you, like it could be anything as simple as being like, please, dear God, like, Graham, like, help me find a parking spot. Like, my grandma's name was Paula, so we all call her like P. So I'll be like driving, like, P, come on, just find me a spot. It's like anything from like the big stuff to even like the little minor things. But I think talking to her and like being able to still like have that sense of connection to her, I think is, yes, it's like so, I guess maybe in a weird way of healing that grief too. Just like knowing that I can still do that.
Yeah.
So I think you and I, definitely have a similar experience with praying to our grandmas. It's our sense of comfort.
Yeah. That is the wrap of our first episode. And what are you looking forward to, Shauna, with season 3?
I'm looking forward to a lot of the topics we're covering, a lot of the guests that we're going to have, the amazing guests this season. I'm really, really excited for all of that. I'm excited to share this with our listeners. I'm excited to kind of dive back in. It's been a while. What about you? What are you excited for?
Yes, I feel like the topics that we've chosen for this season is such a great, juicy topics that it will give the listeners more of a sense of who we are and what happens pre-diagnosis to post breast cancer, and talk about our jobs. And we are excited about the voice memos. I feel like that is such an exciting part to just include people who want us to like share their stories on our platform. So I'm super excited for that.
Yes, giving other people voices to the topics we're talking about I'm really excited for that too. That was like one of the things I was really passionate about doing this season. So I'm really excited. A very special thanks to our podcast producer, Bethany Allard, and our podcast editor, Ayla Anderson.
Thank you all for listening and supporting our podcast. Sharing our stories with you has been incredibly healing for both of us, and we hope it helps other women in their journeys through breast cancer.
Ladies, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and fellow breasties. Help us reach more women by subscribing and rating us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and now on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram at TYFTS Podcast and email us at tyftspodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you guys, so shoot us a message. We will link any resources from the episode in our show notes.